Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty fundamental, how we learn.
Yeah, how we learn. It's something we all do, but
Right, but we don't always think about how we do it.
right, exactly. And you sent over a bunch of stuff titled Text Collé,
Hmm.
and there's this one essay, Understanding Learning Styles, a deep exploration
Hmm.
that I think is a good place to start.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to really dig into today.
Okay.
We want to give everyone listening kind of a crash course on this whole learning styles thing and
Yeah.
maybe help you figure out a little more about your own learning style.
Sound good.
So the essay kicks off by talking about the idea that people learn in different ways, which I think we've all kind of experienced, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's like we all have our own little quirks when it comes to how we best take in information.
Exactly.
And that's where these learning styles come in. It's all about trying to categorize those differences.
To like make learning more effective, right?
Right, yeah.
So the first model they talk about is the VARK model.
Right, VARK.
I feel like I've heard of this before.
Yeah, it's pretty common. And, it breaks down learning styles into these four categories:
Oh, yeah.
visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic.
Okay, so break that down for us. What does each one mean, like practically speaking?
Okay, so visual learners, they're all about those images, diagrams, charts.
Yeah.
Like if you give them a picture, suddenly everything clicks.
Oh, for sure. A good infographic is like gold for me.
Right, exactly. Then you have your auditory learners.
Mm-hmm.
They're all about listening and talking.
Okay.
So lectures, discussions, that kind of thing.
That's how they really cement the information.
Yeah. And then reading, writing. Pretty straightforward. They learn best through, well, reading and writing.
Good old-fashioned words.
Exactly. And then lastly, you've got your kinesthetic learners.
Mm-hmm.
They got to be hands-on.
They got to do the thing.
Exactly. They learn by doing, experimenting, moving around.
Okay, that makes sense. It's funny, I feel like I lean towards visual and kinesthetic, like I need to see it and then I need to do it.
Yeah. And, a lot of people probably find they're a blend of a few styles.
Right, I'm sure it's not always so clear-cut.
Yeah. So then, moving on, the essay talks about Kolb's experiential learning theory.
Okay, this one sounds a little more complex.
It is, a little bit.
Yeah.
But basically, Kolb sees learning as a cycle.
A cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it starts with concrete experience. That's where you're actually doing something, having a direct experience.
Okay.
Then you move to reflective observation. You think back on that experience, what happened, what went right, what went wrong.
Gotcha.
And then you go to abstract conceptualization. That's where you start to form ideas, theories, based on your reflection.
Mm.
And finally, you have active experimentation. You take those new ideas and try them out. See how they work in a new situation.
Okay, so it's like this constant loop of doing, reflecting, theorizing, and then doing again, but better.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like, imagine learning to bake a cake. Your first attempt, that's the concrete experience.
Right, the cake might be a little flat.
Maybe. Then you think about what you could have done differently.
Yeah.
That's reflective observation.
Okay.
You read a recipe, understand the science behind it. That's abstract conceptualization. And then you bake another cake, trying out those new techniques, and hopefully it turns out better.
Makes sense. So you're constantly building on those experiences.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on from Kolb, we have Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences.
This one always sounded really interesting to me.
It is. It basically says that intelligence isn't just one single thing.
Right.
It's more like a bunch of different types.
Okay.
So you've got linguistic intelligence, people who are really good with words,
Mm-hmm.
logical, mathematical intelligence, folks who are great at reasoning and problem solving.
Mass whizzes.
Right. Then there's spatial intelligence, people who are good with visual information and seeing how things fit together.
Like those people who are amazing at packing a car.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then bodily kinesthetic intelligence, so people who learn best through movement and physical activity.
Ah, the dancers, athletes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And there are more, but the point is we all have our own strengths, right?
Right, and some of us might have several different types of intelligence.
Exactly. So all this is interesting, but how does it actually apply in a classroom? Like, how can teachers actually use this knowledge?
That's a good question. What does the essay say about that?
Well, it talks about how teachers can use different methods to try to cater to different learning styles.
Okay, so like had different activities for different types of learners?
Yeah, exactly. So for visual learners, you might use a lot of infographics, diagrams, videos.
Mm-hmm.
For auditory learners, you might have more lectures, discussions, group work.
Okay.
For kinesthetic learners, hands-on activities, experiments, field trips.
Ooh, I like that. Get them moving.
Yeah. And then for reading writing learners, You might have more traditional assignments, essays, research papers, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. So it's about creating a learning environment where everyone has a chance to shine, right?
Exactly. The goal is to be inclusive, to reach as many students as possible.
That sounds great in theory, but some of the stuff you sent me also mentioned some pushback on this whole learning styles thing, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. There are definitely some researchers who question whether teaching to specific learning styles actually leads to better outcomes.
So, like, just because someone prefers to learn visually doesn't necessarily mean they'll learn better that way?
Right. Some people argue that the evidence isn't really there to support that.
Huh, interesting.
And there's also this idea from cognitive science that using a variety of teaching methods might actually be more effective for everyone.
Okay, so even if you're a visual learner, you might still benefit from listening to a lecture or having a discussion.
Exactly. Engaging different parts of the brain can actually help reinforce learning.
Makes sense. So even if the science is still being debated, is there still value in knowing your own learning style? Like, personally?
Absolutely. Even if you don't fit neatly into one category, understanding your tendencies can help you learn more effectively.
Okay, so how? Give me an example.
Well, let's say you know you're a visual learner, right? You still might get a lot out of listening to a podcast on a topic. But then afterwards, you could try sketching out the key ideas visually. That way, you're engaging both your preferred style and challenging yourself to learn in a different way.
Oh, I like that. So it's about being aware of your strengths and then also being open to trying new things.
Exactly. And it's not just about what works best for you, but also how you might share information with others.
Oh, yeah, good point. Like if you
Yeah.
know someone's a kinesthetic learner, maybe you try to incorporate some sort of hands-on activity into your presentation.
Yeah. So it's about being adaptable, both as a learner and as someone who's teaching or sharing information.
This has been really helpful. I feel like I have a much better understanding of this whole learning styles thing now.
Yeah, me too.
So for everyone listening, as you think about your own learning journey, consider this. How might this awareness of different learning approaches change not only how you learn, but also how you communicate and share what you know with others?
That's a great takeaway.
That's something to think about. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.